This isn't your typical data breach story. No, this is about a financial catastrophe that unfolded in slow motion. It's the story of a patient, methodical, and absolutely devastating theft that pretty much changed the game for cybersecurity forever.
I know, it sounds like a crazy question, right? But for hundreds of people, the answer was a terrifying no. They had absolutely no idea their life savings were being quietly drained, one transaction at a time, until it was way, way too late.
Just let that number sink in. $438 million. And get this, that's only the confirmed amount of crypto that we know was stolen by the middle of 2025. All of it traced back to this one single event. The real total? It's probably much, much higher.
And this is the part that is just going to blow your mind. This massive 9-figure heist, it didn't start with some sophisticated Mission Impossible style attack on a corporate server farm. Nope, it started with something you or I might have running in our own house.
So, how on earth does a home computer become ground zero for one of the biggest crypto heists in history? All right, let's break down how this whole thing kicked off and watch how the dominoes started to fall.
Okay, so here's the play-by-play. It all began with a piece of outdated Plex movie software on a senior engineer's personal computer. From there, the hackers snuck in and planted a keylogger, which recorded every single thing the engineer typed. And that's how they got the holy grail, the master password. With that one password, they sidestepped multi-factor authentication and just walked right into LastPass's corporate network. For 2 whole months, they were just in there, quietly copying everything. Millions of customer vault backups. By the time LastPass announced a breach in November, the attackers were long gone and they had everything they needed.
And this brings us to this really terrifying concept, long-tail risk. See, this wasn't a smash and grab. The hackers didn't just dump the data on the dark web for a quick buck. Oh no, they took it home, they sat on it, and they started a very patient, very long-term project. It's this scary new evolution in cybercrime where the damage doesn't happen all at once. It just festers and unfolds over months, even years.
So the bad guys now have millions of encrypted password vaults. Think of it like they've stolen every safe deposit box from a bank. The locks are still on, but they have the boxes. Now for the next phase, cracking them open.
The key phrase right here is offline access. This is so important. It means the hackers could take those encrypted vaults back to their own computers and just hammer away at them, 24/7 with massive amounts of computing power. No alarms would go off at LastPass, no security alerts, no rate limits, no lockouts. Just pure, brute force power working silently in the dark.
Okay, and this is where the hacker's strategy gets really, really smart. While the passwords inside the vaults were all scrambled up and encrypted, the metadata, so the data about the data, wasn't. The attackers could read the URLs for every single site you had saved. They could just run a search for Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, whatever. And boom, just like that, they had a hit list of every crypto user. This metadata, it was their treasure map.
So they had their high-value targets, but how do they actually get into the vaults? Well, this is where a really old security setting became a fatal flaw. The strength of your vault depends on something called iterations. Basically, how many times your master password gets scrambled to make it hard to guess. Back in the day, some accounts had just one single scramble. Today, the standard is over 100,000. So for those old accounts, even a pretty good password wasn't enough to stop modern password cracking hardware. The attackers could now sort their targets from weakest to strongest.
All right, so they've got their map, they know which locks are the easiest to pick, and so the real heist begins. But it didn't start with a bang. It started with a whisper, a slow, quiet drain designed to go completely unnoticed.
I mean, just look at this playbook. It is ruthlessly efficient. Step 1, find the weakest vaults, the ones with those ridiculously low iteration counts. Step 2, of those, find all the ones connected to crypto. Step 3, point all of your cracking power at that small high-value group. And finally, Step 4, the jackpot. Crack the password, open the vault, find the crypto seed phrases people stored in their secure notes, and just drain their wallets. It's simple, and it's absolutely devastating.
And sure enough, by 2023, the money started to disappear. An estimated $35 million vanished, mostly from early crypto adopters. You know, the exact group of people most likely to have those old, weakly protected LastPass accounts. See how it all connects?
And then the attacks went big league. Ripple's co-founder Chris Larsen had a staggering $112.5 million stolen in a single hit.
This wasn't just about small-time investors anymore. The attackers were proving they could go after the biggest fish in the sea.
Which brings us right back to that jaw-dropping total. By mid-2025, the confirmed, traceable losses shot past $438 million. And I gotta say it again, that's just the money that investigators could definitively prove was connected. The real damage is almost certainly far, far worse.
So, the money's gone. But the story isn't over. The investigation into where it all went and how gives us some of the most critical security lessons we've had in the last decade. Let's dig into the fallout.
So how do you follow the money when it's digital? Well, you call in the forensics experts, firms like TRM Labs. Because crypto transactions all live on a public ledger, the blockchain, these digital detectives could actually follow the trail of stolen coins, even as the thieves tried to cover their tracks.
And what they found was a clear, repeatable pattern. The attackers would take the stolen crypto, swap it all for Bitcoin, then tumble it through something called a mixer, like Wasabi Wallet, to try and muddy the trail. But it didn't work. The investigators followed the money right through the mixer to a couple of Russia-based exchanges that are known hotspots for cybercrime. The trail didn't go cold.
So, after all this, what are the big takeaways? Well, there are a few huge ones. First, that line you think you have between your personal devices and your work security, it's gone. That Plex server proved it. Second, and please listen to this if you own any crypto, a password manager is the worst possible place to store your seed phrase. That's like taping the key to your bank vault right on the front of the door. Third, old security settings are just ticking time bombs. And finally, that zero-knowledge promise a lot of companies make, it's a nice marketing term, but it means absolutely nothing if your master password is weak enough for someone to crack.
And this right here, this might be the most sobering part of the whole story. For its part in this mess, LastPass was fined about £1.2 million by the UK's Data Protection Agency, which, okay, sounds like a lot, but then you put it next to the more than $438 million that users actually lost, and you just see this massive disconnect between the corporate penalty and the real-world human cost.
So, that brings us to the final question, the one this whole story has been building up to. It forces us to look in the mirror at our own digital lives. After seeing how one simple mistake, one old setting, could lead to a years-long silent financial disaster, you really have to ask yourself, what am I protecting in my own vault? And how sure am I that someone isn't quietly trying to pick the lock right now?